Debbie with Kip's Corner. Welcome back. I am continuing to work on the bird journal. I'm making great progress. My goal is to be done with this by the end of May, and I don't have a whole lot of time left, like 9 days. I'll do it. I will get it done. But I'm working on the pages on the inside of the signature. And again, I'm making great progress. And in my last video, you might have seen as I was kind of beginning to flip through some of the pockets I was working on, this first page. This is going to be the very first page of the journal. And on this piece, I integrated a simple weaving, showed my knots, messy, it's not this beautiful piece. It's intended to be a bit of a mess. A woven fabric, the weaves, the knots and the loose threads and everything, it just reminded me of Bird's Nest. I did the two in my head just went together. And so I wanted to figure out a way to incorporate this little woven piece with fabric or with textiles, yarns and strings, and I'll show you what I used. But I wanted to figure out a way to incorporate it into the page and not just like make one and glue it on. I wanted it to be a part of the page. And so this worked. Yay, it worked. I've done two, just this one for this journal, and somewhere, if I can find it, I have another one for another journal. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, here it is. Here's the second one I did. So this is on the inside page, and this is the outside page. And so I did the exact same thing, showed my knots, strings hanging, the whole 9 yards. And you can see my hand through there, it's a window. So what I want to do is make one more for one of the signatures in this journal, and it'll be, it actually goes right here. It goes in the third journal, the third signature. Okay, so I thought I would show you how I made it. So first off, I just took this is pretty heavy. This is a 49 in Market scrapbook sheet. It's a nice heavyweight cardstock, and you do need that substance. I don't think this would work with just regular paper. I think it would be too flimsy and floppy and kind of rip on you. So nice heavy cardstock. I cut a window. The size of the window doesn't really matter. The placement of the window doesn't really matter either. You don't want to get too close to the edge. Again, you want stability. So I just cut a window. This one is a little bit different size than the other one because I didn't want them exactly the same. Then I took the piece that I cut out, and I used an X-Acto knife, so I had a solid piece in there. Cut that in half. So I had two pieces, and then I scored those and folded those two pieces in half. I trimmed a little, but basically. And it doesn't matter. You can see this is this side. This is the inside. It doesn't really matter which way you score. No matter what you do, one side will kind of match and the other won't, unless the front and back of your scrapbook paper is identical. So score those in half. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these pieces on, and this gives me, I'm going to glue them on the top and the bottom like this, and this gives me that stability that I need to prevent ripping, because now you've got 3 layers of cardstock here, and that's pretty sturdy. Next up, what I'm going to do is I've got this little punch. I don't know if you can see, it's got little hole, there you go. You can kind of see it's got little holes all the way around. And I used this section where they're marked every, what is that, 1/4 of an inch. I will glue these on, and then I'll lay this on and center it and poke holes in here. And I just use, I just have a poker because these holes are pretty small. My awl won't really fit through there, so I'm just going to get the holes started, and then I'll go back through with my awl and finish them up. So that's what I'm doing next. So here we go. Okay, so the important thing here is that you get the same number of holes, top and bottom. If you don't have a guide like this, you could just use your ruler and tick off the marks across the top and then poke your holes. It looks like I didn't get that perfectly straight, but these two pieces will be covered. On this one, I covered them with just two little pieces of trim. So those will be covered. So it's not quite as important to get them, you know, perfectly aligned and straight here on this one. I also covered those with some trim. So I'll do something similar to this one as well. So get your holes punched. Again, mine are roughly, is that a 1/4 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch? What is that? Yeah. I guess that's 3/8 of an inch apart. So a little closer than a 1/4, a little further away than an 1/8. So that's the start. From here, what I did was I used a pretty big needle, just a big needle, and that's just so I could get this thread, you know, this is just a nice big needle, and that's so that I can get the thread through the hole easily. And I've got this vintage, thread. This is like a baker's twine. This, it feels like wool to me. And then I've got these as well, and these are more, they're sort of like DMC flosses. You could use anything really. Because this is a small piece, I didn't want to use anything really, really fat or big. And I think on this one, since there's so much blue in here, although I kind of like the green. So I think I'm going to start off with the green. And the first thing I'm going to do is just put my vertical thread lines, and I'm just going to go up and down with a single piece until I get to the end. So I just want to kind of measure out. That should be enough. And you do want to go ahead, I know it feels wasteful, but you know, this string can always be used. But you do need to go ahead and cut that and have a single piece of string so that you can knot the end of it. And I'm just going to tie a knot in the end. And again, I don't mind my strings hanging down and my knots and all of that kind of stuff. I think it just adds to the charm. I'm going to start from the back here. And I'm just going to poke that. And I'm just going to go run up and down. Like here, so I'm going to go up. So that gives me my straight line up. And then next I'm going to go over. So I wasn't recording, so I don't know what I didn't get, but basically you just keep going. If you're on the front side, you're going up and down. If you're on the back side, you're going over. So just make sure you hit all of your holes. And it kind of looks like prison bars when you get done. See, you've got these lines up and down. So it looks a little bit like prison bars. I'll be to the end here in just a moment. And as soon as I get to the end, I'm just going to tie it off with a knot. Again, in this particular instance, I'm okay with all my knots showing. Just adds to the charm and the grunginess. over. And it doesn't really matter the number of strings you've got. It doesn't matter if it's an even number or an odd number. Again, you want to make sure that you're reinforcing that paper as you're pulling it through, because if you don't, you could very easily rip. Even though this particular one is 3 thicknesses of it's 3 thicknesses of cardstock, it could still rip easily. And clearly you can see that I pulled plenty. Oops. And now I'm going to my last hole. Okay, last hole. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm basically, and I did get it a little tight in there. There we go. I'm just going to come around, I'm on the back side, and I'm just going to come around here, go under my last string, my last vertical line, and just going to pull that. And I'm just going to create a knot. Now I'm going to tie it off. Make sure I get that tight enough. And there we go. So basically I just tied it in a knot. I'm going to do one more. And then I'll cut it off. And remember, there. This is not, you know, weaving 101. This is not necessarily, and I'm going to leave this a little bit longer because again, I like the extra there. Okay. So my vertical lines are done. And if I want to bring that onto the front, just bring my strings to the front. There we go. Pull, and you know, I'm just going to pull a length off. I'm not really paying much attention to how much. I don't want to get too much because it knots easily, but I want enough to where I can get a decent. But if I didn't pull enough off and I end up, you just throw a knot kind of in the middle, and again, it looks great with, especially for this purpose, with like the knots and stuff in the middle. And I want to get down as close to these holes as I can. I'm just going to come down here and throw a knot on here. And the same thing, I'm just going to leave a little tail on it for now. If I decide I don't like that tail later, I can always, here, see, I can go ahead and chop it off. And now I can start weaving. So I'm going to go just on an under-over motion all the way through with my needle. And then when I get to the end, I'm just going to turn around and go in the same direction. So I ended up over on this one. Oops, I'm stuck on something over here. Stuck on my ruler. Just pull it through. And on this older, this antique twine, I noticed that the act of pulling it through sort of rubbed on some of this twine, this baker's twine, and broke. There's one piece in here in particular that's really thin and broke it on me a couple times. But again, I loved that. All right, so now I want to kind of just make sure this first row gets down here. I'm just going to use my fingernails to push that down because I want to be down. I want to get a good start down below my paper. All right, my last one was over, so now I'm going to go under. So you do the exact opposite, and it's just an up and down, over under, I should say. It's just an over under motion. The thicker the horizontal piece that you use, the faster you'll fill up your weaving, but you just keep going. And I just use my fingernails. You know, again, this is not expert level here. And you don't want to pull too tight over here on the side because you don't want your threads to go too much. They will a little bit naturally do a little bit of that, but you don't want them to do too much. Okay, I'm not at the end of I've got a little bit of thread left, but I don't want to, because I want to switch colors, I don't want to go up any higher. So I'm just going to push this all down and kind of just mess with it a little bit while I've got it here. And now I'm going to tie this off. And so since I started down here, I'm going to go ahead and tie this off here on the end. You don't have to, you could tie it off in the middle. It'd look fine. But basically, I'm just going to do the same thing that I did before, where I'm going to go back under that and knot it. And I'm going to do that twice. Just holding this down so that I can pull this nice and taut. Just create a little knot here. And as part of this lot of vintage threads, there's this other, again, this feels like wool. And it looks like it's like a double strand. A little tiny bit of that I think would be really pretty. I wish it was a little bit more of a purple, but I think this will look good. And it's got knobbies in it, so that actually adds a nice texture too. So let me cut a piece of this off. Okay, I finished off the weaving, left my strings hanging, not showing, nice and sloppy, grungy if you will. And I did that on purpose. I wanted that look. And I just glued this. It's still wet, so I can move it just a little bit, trying to straighten that line up there. And I just put a piece of trim, top and bottom, to cover my holes. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the reverse side. I'm going to come in here, and this is the back side. This is where I went over, so it's not quite as messy, but I'm going to go ahead and put my trim on here the same way I did on the first one, and then you have a little window of weaving. Yeah, I think we're ready to finish this up. So the next video you see on this journal will be my final flip through. We're that close, so stay tuned. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you're watching this and you're not currently a subscriber, if you'll click the Kip Corner icon logo that you see about now towards the end of the video here, that will take you to a subscription. To subscribe to my channel. It's free of charge, of course, and then you can get notifications for when I post new videos. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'll be back. Bye.